Hello, this is an amazing podcast. This is D and Modi, and after watching God of High School, a bunch of other stuff, and reviewing the entirety of JoJo's Part 5, we are finally going to review something very weird, and this is coming from me. So we're doing a little something different. We are reviewing the first two episodes of the Japanese live-action tokusatsu series, Kamen Rider Saber. The latest installment of a franchise I am very familiar with and a very big fan of. And with that said, this was weird as all crap. So, what did you think?
Okay. Yeah, it was weird, but I don't get... It's not any weirder than any other Kamen Rider stuff.
Really?
I don't get it. I think it makes a little bit less sense, but it's not like... it's not like weirder. I think I will say the premise is the most interesting. I would say, or it's the most unique premise. I would say, and it also it feels unrestricted because you can do so many things with the books. Like there's so many different books, so many different stories, so many different powers. Mm-hmm. So it feels less restricted. But I wouldn't say it's weirder.
So one thing I will say. Out of a lot of the stuff I've seen, I really respect the writer/director of this. Because it is so painfully clear from the writing, they just want to skip straight towards the action. And I think the fact that the writing serves that purpose really, really well. Like, it isn't super huge next level writing, but the way it just is aware of what it has to do and it does it in the most efficient way possible. And as someone who's a big action fan and a person who's a big fan of writing action, I can really respect the craft of just cutting straight towards the spectacle. On the other end though, there might be a little too much action in this.
Okay. Before you go on, I really don't see how the amount of action and B, the way the writing is tailored to the action is different from other Kamen Rider series. So it seems like I feel like the other Kamen Rider series did just as good a job, at least from the ones that I've seen. I've seen I guess 2 or 3.
So the way that writing works in this is if you watch the first episode, there is very little breathing room. Everything is just dedicated to establishing people, places, and things. And it doesn't do much to sort of establish an emotional connection or just give you a second to just sit with the characters. It's literally just I'm your editor. You're a writer. You have a editing thing to do. This is your character. Go action henshin. There's probably of the Kamen Rider series I've seen, this has there's always the whole with any superhero medium. There's the moments where they're out of costume, and then there's the moments where they're in costume. This has the most condensed out of costume moments I've ever seen in a long time.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. That's true.
The amount of time
they don't spend that much time. Yeah.
The amount of time between things being normal and things things are quote unquote normal at least 95% of the time in these episodes. And I'm using normal in air quotes. In fact, normal is a bad term. Non-explodey times, that's better.
That actually is a lot better because I wouldn't say it's normal ever. But yeah, I think it I see your point. It does feel like those like you said, the out of costume moments are it's they're just there to get you to the fight. Yeah. They're there to get you to the fight.
And again, that's why
and I think it also, but that plays into the characters because it makes the characters like very one dimensional, which
Yes.
is not. It's not like a an unusual thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very noticeable here.
Oh,
in this
completely.
series.
Like, one thing I will say is like the other reason I really respect it is it doesn't dedicate much time to the calm bits, but it was effectively able to like establish every single thing you need to know going to the action bits. But like you said, like
Yeah.
it has no time to breathe to like set up characters. It has no time to like just catch a breath and just like let us sit down and know what's going through their heads and get to know them. They only have like one. They only have time for like literally one dimension. And that's it.
Would you say? Because I remember how you were telling me about how Ruby is pretty much written like it's written around the action. Would you say this is kind of like the same thing?
This is how Ruby should have been written. Like the reason I say that is the problem with Ruby's writing is it doesn't give you the who, what, when, where, and why. It doesn't give you all the necessary information. Like Ruby's like downtime moments are easily 300% longer than what you see so far in this show, but they give you they only give you like 30 to 40% at most the information you need to like go into the fight aware of everything that's going on. This easily gives you all the things you need to know, for better and worse.
Yeah. That's definitely true because there was no point even though the whole power system is kind of confusing, but it's not confusing. It feels kind of complex.
Mm-hmm.
But I was never confused about what was going on. Like I was always like I got it. I got what was going on, which is pretty like the fact that I mean there's stuff that they didn't even explain like how you use the books and or like the fact that each like story has its own attributes like they did a really good job of just showing that and just literally you seeing like he gets this book, you see the title, you see like a little picture, he plops it in, and then he does something that's like related to it. And then I'm sure it helps if you actually know the story. I didn't know many of the stories that were mentioned in it, but I'm sure it helps if you know the stories too.
Right. Like, so for people who are just like coming in looking for a full-on review or rather first impressions, Kamen Rider Blade is basically follows the story of a small-time writer running a bookstore who suddenly gets dragged in between a war between two magical factions over magical books that have a varying degrees of like magical power that, from based on what we see in the shows, has a strong reality warping effect to them. And you basically have light side and dark side trying to fight over one super book that contains all knowledge of human history. And then 5 minutes after learning all that, you have reverse isekai, like islands getting reverse isekai into the real world. The main character getting isekai, a whole lot of books. There's a scene where a dude in a cloak summons a bunch of books that turn into a monster that then summons a giant book that eats a city, and then there's like Inception stuff, and everything's like exploding, and again, I have a lot of respect for this show because it tries to do so much ambitious stuff.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it doesn't always get it, and it doesn't always stick the landing, and it definitely doesn't have the budget to support it. But the fact that it had the ambition to like try it and land the way it did, I really appreciate it.
Definitely. Considering the budget, definitely like it's done a very good job.
But yeah,
another thing I think is funny is the villain in this story, I guess, because in a way this has got to be like the lamest villain you've ever seen. He sits in a room, him and his like henchmen sit in a room writing a book. Isn't that hilarious? Like,
Okay, to be 100% fair, there's a lot of shows that have like we have to get to the final boss, and it's just like a matter of just fighting through the grunts, getting to the final boss, like Demon Slayer or even JoJo's. I feel like the main villains can't be doing the most exciting stuff in that downtime. Like we saw, like Dio Brando was just chilling out, reading books and stuff. So,
but it would be cooler if if he was just, what was his name? I forgot his name. If he was just sitting there in a dark room, sitting on like a throne or something, and just like staring quietly. That would be cooler than him sitting there standing and like laughing as like his little puppet writes a book. Like that, anything would be better. Like doing nothing would be better than that.
And like Kate, like the whole design of his lair too. Like that place is so cramped, you know. Like, I feel if you're, like, this giant leader of this super evil organization, you would be able to, like, afford a little bit more elbow room.
It didn't look intimidating at all either, you know? Like, I would want to go there for a sleepover, you know? Like, it seems like a pretty chill work environment.
You know what the other issue is? Like, they had the main villain in, like, full-on costume, and I feel like it kind of hurt it a little bit, because you have, like, this very grounded, like, environment with people in like your standard like anime villain garb, and you just see him in like this giant bulky armor. He just stands out so comedically.
Or it would have been more interesting if like his cronies or whatever were in costume and he wasn't.
Yes,
I think that would have been interesting too. I think there did need to be people among the villains who were in costume, because then it would just feel weird, because you have on one side you have like the protagonist powering up and doing these crazy things, fighting these monsters, but then the guy who is causing it is just like looking like a regular human. I guess that could be interesting, but it would just feel weird overall if there wasn't someone who's like in transformation mode.
Look, the problem is it doesn't give you a bar to shoot for. Like, when you have him in, like, Transformers, like, oh man, he's gonna go fight this dude. It's gonna be so epic. But when you see them out of costume, it's just like, okay, so who's this guy? Like, what's gonna happen?
Unless there is some transformation that he'll do on top of that one. That would be interesting, I guess.
He probably will. Because, like, I think there's, like, 4 main like hero writers, and there's like 5 villain ones. So there's a strong possibility that each of them will have their own like armored form. Oh,
okay. So far as of episode 2, we just know Toma, and we know Rin Tower, right? The water guy. Oh, and I guess Aladdin came up at the end of the episode.
But... like, this is something I really enjoyed about this like series, though. It's like, this is one of the few shows where I literally feel like when I'm watching it, I'm in a different world. Because no one acts normal, and every single frame is just some weird stuff going on. And this is what I was like, I kind of want to ask you. So, like, we see Toma, get it? Toma. We see him, like, going to meet...
No, I don't get it. What does that mean?
Tome, as in book, ancient tome. His name is Toma.
Oh, wait, is that the actual reference? That's crazy.
I don't think so, but if someone told me it was, I wouldn't hesitate to believe them.
Oh, okay. That's good.
But, like, this dude, like, goes up to, like, deliver this book to his family, and then all of a sudden, a giant book appears in your city, engulfs it, and you're in a fantasy land. Books are rotting. Like, buildings are rotting, dragons are flying through the air, monsters are attacking, and you finally meet this, like, weird bucket hand guy. And he's like, I am going to use this book to take over the world! Like, and he's just, like, super normal and super chill. Like, books aren't allowed, you don't use books for that! That's wrong! And I'm just, like, wondering, like, what point in all that do you just, like, accept everything that's going on and just like lose the ability to be surprised by stuff?
Okay, no. No, it's not even him. It's everyone. Okay, so like, if I was him, right? If I was in that situation and that happened to me, my first thought would be like, oh, someone must have spiked my morning coffee or something, and I would be like losing my mind, right? Him, like you said, he's just on point with it right away. Like this is just completely normal. Like he was expecting this to happen at any moment. But then there's May, who's even crazier in my opinion. Like
Oh, yeah.
because she doesn't even have any connection to this. He has like the little book or whatever. She doesn't have any connection to anything, and she's just like taking pictures, going wild. Like the only one who acted normally was the little kid. I forgot his name, but he was the only one who was like a normal human in that situation.
Yeah. But like seriously, I'm just trying to like figure out like if you just like I feel like for me personally, if I was still conscious through all of this, as soon as I heard as soon as I saw like the random bucket monster, I wouldn't hear him say like, "Book, I will use this book to take over the world." I would just be like, "Okay, fine, whatever." Like, that's the second most normal thing that's happened to me today, so like, I would be angrily accepting of it. Like, I would be like, it'd be at that point where I start accepting this as norm, and I'm just like going into culture shock about it.
Yeah, and yeah, it like you've said, it doesn't waste any time. So like he's just like right on top of the job from the start, which goes into part of the why I don't like him as a character because he's too positive.
He's too ready for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's just so like he doesn't have any hesitation at all, and he doesn't have like any. He just like always says it's like if someone gave you a test. And it was like the shonen protagonist test. Yeah. Like, and like, you know, he would get all the answers right. Like, it would just be like 100%. Because everything that comes out of his mouth is just like it's like a cliche, pretty much, you know? Like, he literally speaks in cliches. So, yeah, I don't know. And I'm trying to think, like, it's possible that I might just be seeing him this way because it's possible that, like, if this was an anime, I wouldn't think twice of it, and maybe it's just because it's live action that I'm noticing it, but I don't think so because like I think he's real. Like he doesn't have any. It doesn't seem like he has like any original. He seems like a bot, you know. Like
yeah.
In
fact, I would say it would be even more jarring if it wasn't an anime, because I'm like picturing the entire sequence just like full on kawaii shonen mode, and Jesus. This world
if this was if this was anime, I probably would have dropped it like right away actually because it would have just been so. The fact that it's Kamen Rider saves it because it makes it different at least in that way, right? Whereas if it was anime, it would just be like the most generic thing you've ever seen in your life, except for the premise. Premise is not generic, but like as a character,
yeah, like. I would say that the characters are, like, this is a very, I feel like this is a very unique world and premise with very bog standard characters.
Yeah, I would say so too. And this is something I also noticed a little bit. The lore of it reminds me a little bit of One Piece too. I know I keep bringing up One Piece, but like the whole lore of the like there's like a history and there's a book that contains the whole history, and there's these two groups that are, one is fighting to like take it and destroy it or whatever, and then there's another group that's like protecting it. That's similar to the lore of One Piece too. So that kind of stuck out at me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not important. Just thought I would mention.
Yeah, it's a good comparison. Although I will say this, like after watching the first two episodes, this show has absolute, like, and I know you're saying, like, it being Kamen Rider saves it, but this show feels like it has literally no excuse not to be an anime. Because it uses VFX so much. And I will say, like, the VFX in the first episode, like, the VFX in this are really creative. Like, you have, like, the whole, whenever someone's pulling out a special move, you see, like, the flip book of them, like, performing the move happening on the side. You have, like, the frame rate for some sequences drop to sort of imitate, like, a frame-by-frame kind of look. And some of the presentation of the moves and everything is really nice. And, like, visuals, while aren't, like, perfect, they are pretty nice looking. But at the same time, it's like 90% of the show is like a solid 60% of the show feels like it was like animated in VFX. I really feel like of all the Kamen Rider series and live action series I've seen and the ones we reviewed, this one feels like, yeah, you could have made this an anime really easily.
Yeah, I think so too, but I feel like if it was made into an anime, its flaws would be more obvious.
True.
Especially if they kept the same, like if they kept the exact same type of VFX, it would be very clear. Now, if for example, if like UFO Table did this as an anime, that would be pretty cool. But yeah. I think it would depend.
Like, and I think it's like you said, like, you've seen a shonen character talk like a shonen character, but you never see a live action person talk like a shonen character, so that is something like relatively entertaining about it.
I have. Like, I think a lot of the Kamen Riders
True.
talk like shonen characters, but he just does it like this. Toma specifically is on another level of it, where like every single thing he says is a shonen line, you know, which is what I haven't seen.
It's like he goes through like 3 arcs of emotional shonen sayings in like the first episode.
Yeah.
It's like, believe in yourself, smile through the darkness, believe in me that believes in you, yada yada yada. And one thing I would say that would have helped the character a little bit more, and I don't think we see this often, but like, we never see a character who's like, at least I haven't, who's like openly accepting of the whole magical world thing, but is having a hard time like integrating into it. So like, maybe something like he's gung-ho about jumping into this, but he quickly realizes like how dangerous it is, or like how hard he has to fight, and you have that sort of like outward confidence but inner like anxiety about the whole situation.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to be like a magical shonen protagonist, but he like has to overcome his like own like, holy crap, this is a magical freaking world, what the heck is going on?
Wait, are you saying that's how you would want it to be, or how it is?
I would say that's how I would like it to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be interesting. But it would be interesting, but I also feel like I've seen that before.
Really?
You know? It's, yeah, if you think like Deku or something like that. I feel like there's a lot of characters where they are confident on the outside, but inside they're like, you know, more apprehensive. And I feel like I've seen that.
Deku's confident on the outside?
Well, he at the end of the day, you can say he's confident because he gets it done.
Right,
you know?
right.
But I feel like it's interesting because this series, the fact that it just goes so hard on like just shonen, it makes it different, because I don't think I've seen any series like just go that hard on it, even in anime. Like,
oh yeah,
I guess I'm talking about the main character specifically. Like, it works. It works. I don't know. Somehow it works.
No, like, this entire show just goes full on hard like shonen, and that's kind of why I like that's the thing. I'm not sure. Like, right now, this doesn't feel like the kind of show that I'm, like, actively... I'm not at the point where I'm just like, man, I can't wait till the next episode. Or, oh, man, I have to wait a whole week. I'm very lukewarm on it. But again, I really do appreciate how it just goes full ham right from the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
Like the first episode, like the first two episodes literally felt like mid-season climaxes. Or at
Yeah.
least the kind of stuff you would see.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder what the actual mid-season and season climax is going to be. It's got to be wild. Like, they're probably going to turn like the whole galaxy into a book or something like that.
It's sad that actually feels like something that could possibly happen.
You know what would be crazy? If like going forward, the story actually takes like a dark turn. That would be so interesting if that happened, you know?
Honestly, that could possibly happen. So one thing I really credit like Kamen Rider with is the writers tend to know how to course correct really easily. Like when you're watching a lot of the series, you can tell like the writers had an end goal in mind, but you can tell like there are certain moments where they realize that okay, this isn't working, or okay, this isn't working, and they change it to sort of like smooth out the course. So like there's one series called like Kamen Rider XA where the villain of the first arc is really calm, quiet, like sinister dude, and then you would get more moments where he's like acting out and he's like going really ham. And after like the writers saw how like, people like it when this guy goes ham, they literally had him go ham for like 90% of his scenes. Like, he chews the scene so hard. I'm pretty sure there were bite marks on the screenplay.
I wonder what they would have to do for this series. Like, if there's a character, I wonder. There's no character here that's like that appealing to me so far. So I don't know.
See, if they were,
I guess if I had to choose, I would probably choose May. But yeah,
the thing is, for me, I think in terms of course correction, they would just have to give the show more time to breathe. Because like one thing I'm noticing is, so there's shonen escalation syndrome, and there's what I like to call Toku escalation syndrome, where every episode they introduce new forms or new stuff, or for like a better term, a new toy. And like, heck, within the first like second episode, they literally introduced like a new character, a new form for the new character, and 2 new weapons for those characters. And like, this isn't like exclusive to like Toku. You see it happen in like shows like Gridman, SSS Gridman. But it's really problematic because you never get a sense of like wait for each character's transformation or form. Is like, imagine if every single time Naruto like grew another tail in like Naruto, he instantly mastered it and then grew another tail like the next exact episode. In that same episode, Sasuke masters the cursed mark, and in that same episode, like, Sakura finally achieves a 5% usefulness boost. Like,
that's true, because another thing I was thinking is that this guy is like the most Mary Sue of Mary Sues I've ever seen in my life. That one scene where what's his name? Rintaro gives him like the second book, and he's like, he puts it in, he's like, no, don't do that, don't use 2 volumes. He's like, whatever, and then he just puts it in and just masters it right away, summons the beanstalk, rides his motorcycle up the beanstalk. He's like, oh yeah, that's a good way to do it. It's just
dude,
like, this is so like, crazy.
Like, that was the biggest like, that was intentional. He was purposely trying to flex on him. Because think about it. Like, dude just, like, scans in on his sword and fires off an attack. No, this dude's like, I'm going to put it in my belt, I'm going to summon a giant beanstalk, and I'm going to ride my motherfucking motorcycle up it. I'm shocked he didn't, like, end the fight with a mic drop in front of him.
Yeah, that was crazy. I wonder if he's going to have any difficulty, because he hasn't at all. And I have a hard time seeing it. I don't really know the reason I have a hard time seeing it is because we haven't seen any weak points to his character.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see if he actually runs into difficulty, what that looks like for him, you know?
Right. Because, like, the biggest issue with it is typically the whole, like... So, Kamen Rider, unlike Super Sentai or Power Rangers, their writing style, the style of their show has kind of evolved. So, originally it was like in terms of, like, the Heisei era, it was like, Monster of the Week, Monster of the Week, Monster of the Week, Monster of the Week. Okay, we finally got to the final boss. We beat the final boss. Story's over. Then it kind of evolved into a Monster of the Week, villain of the arc approach. So, like, you have 5 monsters, and then the arc ends with them fighting the villain of said arc, and then the story sort of continues and builds upon there. The issue with this is typically with Kamen Rider writing throughout, like, the Heisei era, it's always been sort of twofold. There's, like, one half dedicated to the Kamen Rider stuff, and then there's the other half dedicated to establishing who the monster is and why they became a monster, as well as what the main characters are going through in their, like, private life and, like, what's motivating them. And it's sad, it's annoying, and sort of disappointing that we don't get any of that in these first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
It's literally introduce the character, like, none of the characters have, like, established arcs or anything they need to overcome. Like, Rentaro is just, like, chill and perfect swordsman dude. Toma is just, like, maximum shonen protagonist. Even, like, the last series with, like, Kamen Rider 01, the main character had to sort of grow and mature into his whole like, president role. Like, they don't establish any, like, arc the main characters could ever overcome.
It seems the only thing that they've established for the future is the mystery of who that little girl is, and I guess who that man was that gave him the sword of the flames. So, do you think that little girl in his dream is that May?
I think that's his sister, honestly.
That's what I thought too. But then when he was, when May was getting, like, sucked into the wormhole kind of thing, she kind of, like, turned into that girl. So that made me think, oh wait, is she supposed to be her? But yeah,
I feel like that was sort of like a quick PTSD flash kind of thing. Like, you know how, like, when shonen characters, like, suffer a traumatic past, and then, like, they have those moments where, oh no, it's happening again. No, I'm stronger now. I won't let it happen. Like, those kind of moments.
Maybe it would be interesting if, like, after maybe, like, these first few episodes, when they finish introducing the other Kamen Riders, so, like, because so far he's just been crushing everything easily, like, no sweat at all, right? So it would be interesting if, like, later on he gets to a fight where, like, this whole time he's just been doing so great, and this fight he just gets absolutely destroyed.
Yes.
And he just loses all his confidence. And then, but at the same time as that happens, he, like, learns about, like, he remembers that girl was his sister, and, like, he just gets traumatized all over again at the same time as losing the fight. And maybe also May gets kidnapped and the city gets destroyed. If all that happened at once, that would be so good.
So, I would definitely, like, that would be so that's something I would like to see them, like, implement, where it's, like, he's been a writer because he's always loved fantasy worlds, and he's always dreamed of becoming, like, a fantasy hero, and, like, everything leading up to that point is just him, like, living his superhero fantasy. He believes he's unstoppable, he can do anything, and then boom, villain of the arc comes up, and he gets crushed, and he has to, like, come to terms that, like, no, despite all this magical stuff going on, this is not a fantasy world. He is not invincible, and he can lose.
That would be so interesting. That would be really interesting. And I feel like I wouldn't necessarily, like, bet on it, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if the show took that direction.
Honestly, based on a lot of the stuff, So, you know the shows Fate Zero and Puella Madoka, Magica Madoka?
Mm-hmm.
The writer of both those shows did a Kamen Rider series, and you would probably really enjoy it, because it knows how to, like, jump into the dark stuff really effectively.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like, it is probably one of the first shows I've seen where all of the characters either go through an arc or die horribly, and it's very fun to watch.
That's hilarious.
Like, seriously, like, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, he's going to get sent to the Shadow Realm, blah, 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 and like, oh, dang, he just got wrecked.
You either die horribly or live long enough to go through an arc.
Yep. But, yeah, how did you feel about the suit designs and overall costume and look?
I like them. I tend to like sleeker designs, and I mean, I don't think there's any Kamen Rider design that I would say is sleek, but this is like among the most. These are among the most sleek ones. I liked Toma's suit. The only thing I didn't like about it was his glasses or goggles or whatever. I feel like they shouldn't have been yellow because it feels kind of bug like and kind of reminds me of a fly. But yeah, I liked his suit, and I also liked what's his name, the Caliber, the villain. I like his too.
Yeah. Like, seriously, like, yeah, that's one thing I would definitely say. Like, visually, the show was on point. Like, the mystical worlds look good. I even give them credit for, like, even when, like, the moments where things go full CG, they knew to, like, keep the Saber model in the shadows so you don't notice it as much.
Yeah. And they also, like, when things went CG, it was, like, generally just, like, wide shots, and they didn't, like, get in too close.
Right. Which, again, is just, like, props. Like, Kamen Rider has never had a really good time with CG. Like, there are some shows, like, there is a set of rules to follow if you want to, like, do something using that level of CG, and very few of those shows follow it. So, the fact that a Kamen Rider series is using this amount of CG and it being executed as well as it does, or well as it is really impressive.
Yeah. It's impressive. Yeah, go ahead.
Like, imagine if this had the Game of Thrones budget.
Yeah, okay, so that kind of goes into what I was going to say, which is that, okay, Kamen Rider, it's they make toys off the Kamen Rider stuff, right?
Yes.
So it's safe to assume that the shows are pretty much just like advertisements for the toys.
It's not just safe, it is a solid assumption. It's a solid fact, in fact.
So, given that, this has got to be like the most successful return on investment ever, right? Because you have these extremely cheap, low budget shows, but that basically just function as advertisements for toys. Mm-hmm. Despite all of that, they still managed to do a really good job of it. Like, I would say it does a better job than like a lot of parts of Pokemon, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Of doing the same thing of like, you know, Pokemon's pretty much just an advertisement, but yeah, it's actually pretty impressive.
Honestly, for a lot of the like American shows that try to like use really wild like VFX, and I'm like referring mostly to like the superhero shows, Kamen Rider actually does better than a lot of them. Like the Arrowverse CW shows, like the costume designs on like the Flash and a lot of those other shows are so unbelievably weak. Like, I'm not saying like design wise, I'm just saying like believability. Like, if I saw a character in costume from like the Flash, I would assume they were a cosplayer. Like in Kamen Rider,
would you not say the same thing for Kamen Riders?
In terms of the show, like in the context of like the Flash, I feel like I'm looking at a cosplayer. In the context of Kamen Rider, I feel like it could be. It feels like a damn good cosplay, and it's good enough for me to believe that, like, yeah, that's battle armor. That is combat gear, sort of.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that in terms of like the costumes. I don't know about the VFX though. Like,
Oh, and yeah, no,
I would.
like VFX for like practical effects. Kamen Rider is pretty on point with, but like on point outside of like the rubber suit monsters. But
Yeah.
like visual effects and CG, I would say it's still pretty on point with like Western shows that aren't like Game of Thrones.
Really, I would say I don't. I would say Western shows are better.
I like
I really would. Maybe it has to do with the fact that I watched it. It definitely wasn't HD. It must have been like 360, 480 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe that has to do with it. But I don't know. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's the presentation of it too.
Yes.
But in Kamen Rider, the VFX just, they always stand out. Always. Like,
Yeah.
it's just automatically noticeable for me.
You know what the weird part though is, like, the way this world is written, they somehow feel way more natural. Like, they feel like they belong in this world more than any of the series we've seen this far.
Yeah. And I think that has to do with the fact that the characters themselves are so, like, fantastical in a way, you know?
I love how like none of them question anything that is going on right now. Like, May isn't like shocked that, like, I love the whole line that's like, oh yeah, so like apparently I heard that in your culture it's rude to like come into a place wearing shoes, so I'm just gonna ride my robot lion into your establishment.
Yeah, very normal.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, I mean, heck, if he did that in McDonald's, he'd probably get free food.
If he did that where?
If he did that in a McDonald's, he'd probably get free food.
Facts. Yeah.
But again, I just love how straight, like, it's a flaw and a, like, benefit at the exact same time, because it's somehow, like, really entertainingly hilarious how all the characters are just, like, accepting, like, they're all so straight, like, not, I want to say straight-faced about this, but I feel like that's not the right term. I feel like they're all so, like, they feel so natural in, like, in this world.
Yeah, I think
Like,
so too.
Like, the thing I will praise about the acting in a Kamen Rider series is I never feel like the characters are just, like, reading lines. Like, you feel as though the actors are legit, like, reacting and, like, having a physical response to the stuff that's going on around them. They never feel like they're just reading lines and just, like, following orders.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Alright, that said, anything else?
No, I don't think I have anything else to say.
Alright. So with that said, I think I'll probably... This is going to be hard for me to say, but I'm going to have to give this a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I would also give it a 6 out of 10. But I just remembered, since I mentioned the fights were the best part of the show, I really liked how the fights were edited. Like, it was really interesting when they did that thing where, like, he would swing his sword and then the flame would, like, engulf the screen and then it would transition into, like, another part of the fight. That was very interesting, I think.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the sword play in, like, the first fight was amazing.
Yeah, it was really good. I would like to see more sword battles if there are, like, you know, other villains that use swords. That and I know Caliber definitely is. He was one of the swordsmen. So when it gets to the end of the show or the arc or whatever, that should be interesting.
Yeah.
And also, it was funny how, like, do you know why they do this or they did this? When he was fighting, I think it was in episode 1, he was fighting that monster that, like, that grew in size,
Mm.
And like they would switch to shots where the monster would be like stamping down on him, and it would be like technical, right? But it would be like obviously the monster wasn't actually bigger. They would just like lower the camera to make it look like he was bigger. But I don't know why they wouldn't just do that in CG since they were doing other parts of the fight in CG too. That was weird.
Because the CG is bad.
Yeah, maybe that's true.
I'm sorry, I know that's kind of conflicting, but like, whenever like they try to like replace characters and like anything that's like a physical body with CG, it turns out really rough. And the great thing about when like the whole technique you saw of like the camera being really close to the ground and looking up, that's a very common like technique in like Japanese monster and tokusatsu media.
Okay, I see.
Like they've been using that same exact camera technique in almost every episode of Power Rangers since like the 1970s.
Really, I never noticed. This is the first time I've ever noticed it. But yeah, that was interesting, and yeah, fights were great in the show, and yeah, I would give the same score of a 6 out of 10.
Oh, by the way, how'd you feel about the opening and the ending?
Wasn't crazy about the opening. In fact, I skipped it both times, but I really liked the ending. I liked it a lot, and the ending was cool. The ending felt like a live action version of the Chica dance. You know, the song itself was good, but also the dance that was unique too.
Yes, this is the
That's
first
a perfect way to end. That was the perfect way to end like this type of show. Like the tone of the show, it fits. It fits well.
So, fun fact, this is the first time in, like, I'm going to say 15 years that Kamen Rider series has had an ending theme.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Who makes Kamen Rider? Is it, like, one specific studio or something?
Yep, Toei. They're the same people who do Power Rangers and Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, that explains so much, especially with this series. Right? Like, I only mentioned a couple things, but I felt a lot of One Piece similarities, even down to the soundtrack. So that actually explains a lot to me.
Alright, with that said, that's been our first impressions of Kamen Rider Saber. Tune in next time.